Hello everyone, welcome back to Brown Coat Reviews. I'm your host Laura with my favorite co-host Scott, and guess what we're talking about today? That's right. Mortal Kombat! So, as you may know, yesterday was Mortal Kombat Day, which means the movie dropped. We watched it late last night, which is why we are talking about it early this morning. Now, we talked very recently about our guilty pleasures, and this is definitely one of both of our guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
We have both films, the original DVDs. We have the game, which I absolutely love.
One of the games.
Yeah. One of the games, yes. And I remember playing that game back, like the original, once upon a time.
Yeah. A long time ago, but yeah, the original when it came out was just like a game changer because I think at the time you had Street Fighter by, I want to say Konami, but Street Fighter was kind of cool in that it wasn't the same like Contra and some other stuff from that era where it was very kind of two-dimensional and flat, and you had a limited number of things you could do. You could punch high, punch low, kick high, kick low. You know, that was about it. Run, jump.
Yes.
Then these games came out, and all of a sudden it was like combination moves. I gotta read something to learn how to play this, which most people never did. They just hit all the buttons at one time and tried to make it work.
That's what I do.
Like, ooh, how to do that? Do it again. And learn by trial and error. But Mortal Kombat took, I thought, the graphics up a level even from Street Fighter. Yeah. And even the original, like, you look back at it now and look at some old screenshots or something, and it's like, wow, that was high tech back then, huh? Yes, we've progressed greatly since then. But at that time, in that era, we weren't that far removed from Pac-Man and, you know, Asteroid and things that were very much pixelated and not a lot of live action at all, if there was any, unless you were on a computer maybe. But even the computer games from that era, Mortal Kombat just took all of that and kind of stepped to the front and said, here's the new level, top this. And then they did. They kept coming back out with new versions, new games. I mean, the reason that I own a PS4 in the first place, because I think a friend of mine got the first one. I didn't have anything until I think PS2 came out, and then I may have bought a PS3. I don't honestly remember now. And then gave up. I was like, you know what? I'm not keeping up with all this new technology. I don't have the time anymore. You know, PS4. The reason that I bought that, two things: this game and Gran Turismo, which we'll talk about some other time.
Yes.
Maybe after today.
Ooh. So, I mean, like the things that we all know and love from Mortal Kombat. You know, the finish him, the finishing moves, which
the fatalities.
My gosh. Okay, so these were like essentials for the game. So what they did with the movie that just came out yesterday is they incorporated so many of those little things that we all know and love from the game. Mm-hmm. So the one that I was, I think, the most impressed with from the movie was Kung Lao. Because they did, like, there was one point where he, like, angles down the hat and he does the swipe, and then you see his eyes come up. And there was one point where he, like, raised his leg and you saw, like, one of the moves from the game. Like there were several that they put some of the special moves and some of the fatalities that are essential to Mortal Kombat. They were incorporated into the movie. So if you've only played the game maybe once, or if you've played the game a ton of times, you're gonna see all these little teeny tiny things that all the fans are gonna love.
Mm-hmm. I think compared to the other movies too, which is what everybody's gonna do. So, you know, the first movies were, they were, in my opinion, they were entertaining for their time. They were kind of what I expected. Like, they didn't blow me away with, like, great acting skills or great, beyond imagination special effects. But they were good. They were good at all of it. They weren't bad. Like, it wasn't like a B-rated flick when it came out. I think even, a couple of the people that were in them had been in other stuff, so they either were famous at the time or went on to become more famous. Yeah. That being said, this group, like, I knew 2, maybe 3 of the actors in it. Yeah. By their face. Didn't know their name, but knew I had seen them in other things. Mm-hmm. The actor that plays Shang Tsung was one of them. The actor that plays Hanzo Hasashi was the other.
Yes.
And then one other. But anyhow,
that was my third.
I think I did recognize Sub-Zero. Yeah, you're right. I did. So yeah, there were 4 for me. All that being said, even though I didn't know all the actors by name, couldn't tell you all the other movies they'd been in, I thought that the fighting in this one was much improved. Overall, like there were certain highlights in the first 2 movies. Certain actors or people that I thought did an excellent job, and then there were some people that you were like, I can tell that you did a boot camp and you never had any training in your life, and you did well, but it wasn't on the same level as the guy you were fighting or the person you were fighting in the flick. Even in this movie, like I honestly watched all the fight scenes and was like, like you were watching 2 pretty equal combatants go at it. So I felt like the fighting came up a level, or the stunts came up a level in this one, and everybody seemed to be more on an even keel, where the first 2 movies wasn't always like that.
So my guilty pleasure, my own background, my favorite character from the original was Sonya Blade. I loved that character, and the thing that I think all of us have a story about is our parents hating Mortal Kombat. Like my mother was determined that there was no redeeming value in Mortal Kombat. So I actually did the only thing that I could think of to convince her that Mortal Kombat was indeed a valuable film. So I found the book. There is a book. And actually it's not bad. But I was like, Mom, if I can prove to you with the book that there are redeeming qualities to this, let me go watch it and let me go see more Sonya Blade. So I read the book, and it actually shows a lot of the Chinese mythology, and background. Like Raiden's actually, an actual, character or mythological god, in some of the ancient cultures, which is really cool. But needless to say, I finished the book, I gave my sales pitch, and I still lost. My mom still refused to let me watch Mortal Kombat, so I had to wait until I could get over to Friends' house to see Sonya Blade. So when the new one was coming out, I was hopeful for Sonya Blade. The one thing that I think all of us again will agree on is Sonya Blade in the original, you could tell she was an actress that was taught to fight. She has like 3 moves, and her fight scene is mostly dialogue. I'm like, okay, there were enough other fight scenes that I was fine, but I was like, okay, please, please, please let the new Sonya Blade not be the same and just be a pretty actress who learns a couple moves, and then we, maybe get some other action sequences from the guys.
Oh, they definitely did a good job with this one.
The new Sonya Blade, like, you understood that she is a special forces, to be reckoned with.
She's a badass.
Yes! So, I was so happy with that. The other thing that I did to prepare for our Mortal Kombat day was I read the comic books, because I'm like, all right, let's see, since I read the book long time ago, how does the comic book compare? How did the comic book compare with the movie? And then Scott had watched one of the animated movies that's over there on HBO. What was it called?
Scorpion's Revenge.
Yes. So I was like, all right, with all this kind of Mortal Kombat background, do we like the film more or less, or do we like other mediums better? So the comic book, couple quick disclaimers in the comic book. There are 3 volume trade paperbacks that are available. The problem is that the volume trade paperbacks do not collect the entire storyline of Mortal Kombat. So if you actually want to read the whole thing, just it's the DC UniverseInfinite.com, and get either a 1-month subscription or get the 7-day trial and just read the whole thing. I think there's 32 issues, and just fly through it. It was good. So it had, of course, what was essential, which was the showdown between Scorpion and Sub-Zero. That was like epic. They had a lot of great characters that we all know and love. Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade, Goro, obviously Jax, Kitana, who makes the world's smallest appearance. She needs to be in there more. Melina, Raiden, of course. I mean, like, there were some really cool characters that as soon as we saw them, you got excited. They did have Sonya Blade and Johnny Cage's daughter, Cassie, who, yay, they have a daughter, but I wasn't really excited about the character. She needs some room for growth. But overall, I found kind of that when I was reading the comic book, even though there was a really cool like storyline that they were trying to do with the Earth realm versus the Outer realm, I was really just in it for the fight sequences. And each comic book, either they were getting to a fight scene or we had a fight scene, which was really cool. But at the end of the day, I found myself just like, okay, when's the next fight? When's the next? Let's see these cool things. Because they did the same thing with the comic book of getting those really cool like finishing scenes or finishing moves into the storyline. So I think I appreciated that more. And towards the end, I was just ready to see when or how is the story going to wrap up. So I won't own the Mortal Kombat series. I will say that. What do you think about the animated?
It tied in very closely to the movie. There were a few major, a few plot differences. Let's just say that. And the characters were all pretty much the same, but a little different again between that version, that animated version, and this newest movie. Overall, though, like, I was amazed at the level of not just gore for gore's sake, because I mean we all know that the game is bloody, it's violent, it's
yes.
You don't pull somebody's spine out by their throat and don't and in a polite way or in a proper way, I guess. So, but the cartoon version, they actually did a really awesome job, I thought, of illustrating, like, even when characters are landing punches, they like show a quick, almost like an X-ray version of the other person's rib cage, and you see the bones crack, and you hear it, and you see it in a way that, yes, it's gory, yes, it's violent, but it's depicted in a way that I hadn't really seen before, except maybe
in the game.
In the game, but not even in the game, because they don't slow it down like that quite as much and get as detailed. There was a version of the game that I played where they do kind of like focus in on it on certain fatalities and stuff.
Yeah.
But this was just like in the fight itself, and it was different. I liked it. It drew me in more, as opposed to just standing there watching two guys beat each other up. Like, you got that kind of behind the scenes, blow by blow of what's damage is being done. That being said, like, I really, really like the animated version. I like the movie as well. If I had to choose between the two, I think they're pretty even. There's some stuff in the movie that wasn't in the animated story because it focused solely on, or more so on, Scorpion, his story, etc. But that being said, like, if they were to do another new Mortal Kombat movie, I think that some of the stuff that they depicted in the animated version, story-wise, could definitely and should definitely find its way into the movie. Meaning, like, there was more meat in it than just here's your characters and they all start fighting. The movie did a good job, sort of, with like Hanzo's background. They didn't really get into quite as much of like Sonya Blade and Jax. It was more or less just a quick little verbal like history. Here's what we were doing. Kind of got a little tiny bit of Johnny Cage as well, a little bit of Liu Kang, but again, it was just like a verbal, like, here you go. There was nothing depicted, I guess is what I'm saying, on the screen, pretty much from any other character's background, including any of the other world characters, except for Hanzo Hasashi in the movie. That's fine, but if you want to know more about the other guys, other characters, then it would be cool to kind of get to see their development. But the one thing I will say, negative-wise, here's my little Princess Kitana. Yeah. She says, I would fight very well, Daddy. Just trust me, I'm very fast. The negatives. So, on the movie version, I felt like Liu Kang was the weakest character.
Yes.
And in the game, I never felt that way.
No.
His fights were all right, but they didn't, like, really entice me to be like, oh, I don't know. He didn't blow me away. Not saying anything about the actor himself. I think he did well. That actor
is ripped.
He's all that, but his fight scenes and his character just left me kind of flat, including the fact that he annoyed me with his there were certain motions he did, and I guess it was an homage to a certain style, but it really started to aggravate me where he flips his little sash
and it's
3 or 4 times in one scene where he's walking around and he pauses and he stands a certain way and he flips his little sash, and I'm like, It almost looked to me like he was trying to remember in his head like where his mark was and what he was supposed to turn and which camera he had to face. Yeah. It didn't feel natural, I guess is what I'm saying to me. And it also felt a little bit contrived where he was like flipping his damn... at one point, I think internally, I don't know if I said it out loud, I was like, if you flip that damn sash one more time, I'm hoping Kano rips it off of you. But
like I had the exact same reaction.
Yes.
And there were a couple little things that they tried giving him that I felt like they were, I don't know if they were trying to make him more memorable, like give him certain quirks that immediately you knew him like visually, but instead it didn't come off as well as the original Liu Kang.
Favorite character out of this movie version?
Okay, so
I don't mind.
I'm mixed because technically, listen, I loved Kung Lao from like his kind of homage moments, his fight scenes, they were awesome. But the like character alone that I enjoyed the storyline for them was Kano. I laughed my butt off at him so many different times. He was more than just some skeezy bad guy or the one who was trying to get Sonya Blade's guff. Like I laughed. He did great fight sequences. There were a couple scenes where he's doing a training homage, and Scott and I both were practically dying laughing at him. So I liked that his character had more. But yeah, that was one of my favorites.
My favorite character in the movie, definitely Kano, hands down. My favorite character in the animated movie, Scorpion's Revenge, definitely Johnny Cage. And the two are exact, like, they're mirror images. So in the animated version, Johnny Cage is the jokester, the guy that you almost feel bad for, but also pull for at the same time, but also are a little annoyed by, right?
Yes.
In the movie, that's definitely Kano. Obviously, Johnny Cage wasn't in this first version, this newest movie, but if there is a sequel, it looks like he'll be in it. But basically, Kano, he stole the show in the first one, I think. Him and Sonya Blade's interactions were just way up there on my list of like, dramatic foils going against each other in a way that you believe it. Number one, that they're pitted against each other, but at the same time you're like, you kind of want to pull for one over the other, but then you kind of want to pull for that one in the next scene, and then you're kind of like, you know what, just let them fight, and whoever wins, I'm happy. So I liked that part of this for sure. My only other thing I would say about the movie in general is, like, number one, I'm glad that they're doing it again.
Yes.
Number two, I think the production value on it was very, very good. I think the originals were also very good. We've advanced quite a bit in technology, and in that way, this one, is probably better in some ways, and I get that. That's sort of to be expected as our movie creation process even evolves. What I think they should do, if they continue, is focus a little bit more on the backstories, and give us something visual to go off of, not just a character standing there saying, well, here's what I did for the last 6 years and now here I am. But before they really focus on that, they need to make sure that they've got the people in those roles nailed down. Like I believed most of those people. In fact, pretty much all the people except for Liu Kang. And even it's not just Liu Kang, because I think his fighting ability is there. I think his look is there. His image is there. I just don't know if that's my version of Liu Kang. And I could be totally wrong. That could be exactly what the people who created the game intended for him. If he was supposed to be that way and I was thinking of him wrong this whole time, that's on me. I'm not saying that the guy did a bad job. It was a different portrayal of that character from the game than I expected. That's what I'm saying. My, huge applause to him as an actor, as his fighting ability, all that stuff. I'm sure that he's well known and done other stuff. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not picking on him. What I'm saying is that character's depiction wasn't what I imagined. That's all. Was it what you thought? Was there anybody else in there that you're like, man, they nailed it? That's exactly who I thought that was from the game, or better than the first movie, or the same, and I like them in the other movies? Or is there something else that you're like, they totally missed it on that we didn't discuss?
So I think for me overall, because when we finished the movie, I had like a mixed bag, and I was struggling to figure out kind of what we would come up here and tell you, because in some ways I was completely going down memory lane. I remembered playing the games, like the original game, the latest game. I remember the movies, and I started going straight through my childhood. And every single time they had those little teeny tiny things that reminded me of the movie, the games, etc., I got excited. And then you finish the first movie, and I went from like absolute excitement to, well, where's the rest? Like, and I think what Scott was describing is sort of what I was feeling, where I'm like, okay, I wanted more from the characters. They had some amazing action sequences, loved it, but I don't know, like there was something else missing, that if you took away the action scenes and all you were left were these characters, beyond Kano being absolutely freaking hysterical, what did you feel like you were left with when you kind of unpeeled that? And that's where I think the big flaw is. So if they do a second one, you know, and I guess it's hard because I'm like, it's a Mortal Kombat movie. Do you really want a lot of character death?
So that's what I was gonna say. I don't know if we're being fair to it as a franchise, because it's a video game turned into a movie. I mean, if you look at others, like, you know, Resident Evil, which is another favorite of mine, and I have, well, do you want to talk about Doom?
Doom is a game that
Sorry, Dwayne Johnson, but oh my god, the movie sucked. Anyhow, if you look at other movies that were based on and started from video games, I mean, it's not about dialogue, and it's typically
Lara Croft
can be, but it's more about just like you're taking a completely and totally action sequence based product and then trying to create an hour and a half story about it. So I get it. Yeah. If we're being unfair, then it's just because we're fans. We're fans of the game.
Yes.
We get invested in the characters in the game to the point where when we see them on the screen, we want to see and hear more about that character. That's all. It's the same way, like, honestly, if they develop it more and they do more movies with it, like they nailed so much of it and did such a good job, I think it left us wanting more. Like if it was shoddy production, bad backdrops, just weird action sequences that don't make any sense, like, you know, just random fight scenes thrown up with nothing really to tie them together, then I think we would just be like, oh, well, that was a fun fight movie based on the game, and that would be it. We wouldn't want more. Okay. So they did such a good job on all the other stuff that we want more.
And I think it's obviously they set it up for a sequel, which they should. But I don't know how long they're gonna, you know, continue the storyline. If they're gonna try like a Fast and Furious, let's see how many we can go. But I will say, like, when we finished the first one, like, I immediately wanted the second one. So, like, now I want the next round of characters, and I want to see what we're going to do next time. Yeah, like, I mean, there were some amazing moments and little hints of characters that will come in the sequel that, like, I'm in.
Yeah. I will say, too, my final thought on it, like, comparing it to specifically other fight video games that have become movies, and in my mind that is always going to stick out as Street Fighter. I think they did a far better job. I think Street Fighter was campy. I think it was kind of making fun of itself and the video game in a way that I, as a fan of the video game, was like, well, why'd you do that? It's almost like a waste of effort and talent when you could have made it more interesting. You could have done something like what Mortal Kombat did, in my opinion, where they tried to give backstory. They tried to give a story of who these people were and how they, you know, would have come together and what their backgrounds would have, you know, led them to in their current positions that you meet them at in a video game, versus Street Fighter was just kind of like, I mean, like Raul Julia, if I don't know how the man made it through a single scene without laughing. And Baraka, I mean, in the movie, what the heck was that? It's like you put an orange troll wig on a guy that you body painted green. So I won't knock it in this video because this is about Mortal Kombat. I will say that I felt like this was a much better depiction of a video game turned movie that was based on just characters fighting on the screen, and I hope they do more.
Okay, so at minimum, if you're like, okay, well, are we being too harsh? Okay, go watch the trailer and watch that scene where Sub-Zero takes the blood spattering and turns it into a blade and then stabs him with it. I'm like,
that one scene was really cool, yeah.
Like, that's the kind of fight scenes that you have. So everything is just very visceral and raw, and everything's happening so quickly, so you get these little teeny tiny moments of going, oh, no, he didn't! over and over again.
Yeah.
So I do know when we go back and rewatch it, because we're gonna watch it a second time. Probably not right now, but we will watch it again. That you'll see some more little details of the action scenes and these little teeny tiny moments. So at minimum, those action scenes and sequences were phenomenal, and they did not just put the good scenes in the trailer.
No, they did not.
So there were more fight scenes that were just as good, if not, well, I don't know if they were better. Because, I mean, there
was some stuff in there that I think was better that I never saw. I didn't see in the trailer, but I didn't watch a lot of the trailers. Well, most of Kung Lao's I never saw in the trailer.
Kung Lao, I think I saw that he was in a trailer.
I saw
his
character, but
his character, but none of his fight scenes.
And in the movie, they were some of my favorites too.
Exactly. So, Kung Lao was definitely one of my favorites. So, go check it out. But the big question, of course, for you all in the comments is, have you watched it? Watched the movie? And were you a fan of the original movies? Were you a fan of the game? And how do you think that it compared? Do you think that it kind of lived up to your expectation, or were you a little disappointed? And which one was your favorite character in the new movie, and which one were you just a little bit disappointed by? Mm-hmm. And of course, my ultimate question of, are you going to be tuning in for the sequel? Because we'll be there. Another Mortal Kombat day. Oh, darn. So this is Laura and Scott from Brown Coat Reviews.
Sorry, gotta hear the music. Yeah.
With a bit more Mortal Kombat to end our day. Have a great one. We'll talk to you all soon.
Finish him.